All right, so welcome to the first edition of the Pale Horse Podcast. I'm the host, Ryan Coe, with Apex Defense Group. I've got Shawn and Rodney here, and we're just going to talk about basic introduction to the podcast, what it's about, our vision for the podcast as we go through this. And we'll be producing usually 2 to 3 episodes a month, so stay tuned, tune in, subscribe. You'll find it on most of your podcast streaming services and on YouTube, and we're going to dive into it. So Shawn's an instructor here with us, and Rodney's an awesome student with us, and so we're just going to dive in. I figured 2 great guys to have on the first episode as we go through this. Do y'all want to introduce yourself, talk a little about your background?
Sure, go ahead, Shawn.
Sure. So my name is Shawn Robinson. I'm instructor with Apex Defense Group. I do the concealed carry classes, some precision rifle. My background is old school Army. You'll hear some of that today. And was a scout sniper for my battalion back in 1990s, early 1990s. My civilian side is I was a risk manager and senior officer for a top 7 bank in the United States. So I bring a bit of the civilian and military into these discussions, and that's really my thing.
Yeah, so I'm honored to be here, and Ryan, thanks for inviting me in. I'm a Christian, a husband, a father, a veteran, also served in the mid-'80s through the mid-'90s in the Army, both active and reserve. And so I've been training with Ryan a good bit over the past year, and we've really developed a good friendship, I feel like, hopefully.
Oh, yeah.
So, just hopefully, with the podcast, bringing some things out to light that I'm sure that a lot of people have questions about, and hopefully can be enlightened.
Yeah.
And so looking forward to participating in that.
Heck yeah. That's what this podcast is going to be all about. We're going to talk about the physical aspects, and my slogan earlier I was talking was preparing you guys for your mental, spiritual, and physical battles. So we're going to go through and talk about tactics. We're going to talk about training tips and what we're seeing in the industry. We're going to talk about, some life struggles we have. My goal for the podcast, and we've got some awesome guests lined up, is just real dudes being open, being honest with each other, having real life discussion on some sensitive topics that I think a lot of, whether it's instructors or people in any industry, people in society shy away from. So that's what it's all about. It's doing life together. There's a small group I'm part of. It's Open Bible, Open Life. And I greatly love that because that's where I think real men and women can really grow together and do life together. And I think that's what's missing in modern day culture a lot of times is simply that. It's we are so closed off. We are so scared of being vulnerable, or we are just pushed out to the point that everything we produce is clickbait, or it's just content for the sake of content. And that's the real reason I wanted this podcast, is being in the industry. I'm director of training at Apex Defense Group. My background's counterterrorism, anti-human trafficking operations, and intelligence work. And in the industry that I've been in for almost the last decade, training, what we see a lot of times is just clickbait produced. And it's these training companies who mean well. I'm not bashing them, but it's hot takes, or it's 30-second soundbite of someone's opinion, or it's a 10-second video of people who don't carry around in the chamber is dumb. Well, we all know to carry around in the chamber. We know that 10-second clip didn't do anything for this gun community, but it got 4,000 likes, and that's the whole reason you produced it. Instead, let's dive into the science behind it. So let's look at statistics. I'll run a handgun class, and we'll look at a draw time of round not chambered, averaging 3.5 to 3.7 seconds. Then we look at round chambered, averaging 1.2 to 1.5 seconds. And let's dive into the science behind that. Let's dig deeper into these issues that actually matter. whether it's current events or training. It's just the industry, the world, social media, the church even is just so consumed with clickable sound bites that honestly mean nothing.
Right.
It's just noise.
Yeah, what I think is interesting about that, Ryan, is we live in an age, historically speaking, where we have more complete information than we've ever had in human history. We can get historical information. We can get scientific information, social information, easier and faster than we've ever been able to find it. And what we're finding, at least what I'm seeing, is more and more people are almost self-hedging, putting themselves in a bucket and not looking outside that bucket. They look at the same information again and again. Either they're frightened to look outside those walls or that little group or that clique or whatever they associate with, or it's too much energy. But there's just no, it's funny to see how human nature, where we've always craved information, people would put their lives on the line to get messages from one state to the next. When we look at this country and the U.S. Mail Service and the Pony Express and this sort of thing. But now we can click a few times on the computer and get what we need, but we don't do it. It's because there's something scary about it.
Yeah, and Ryan, I think we had a conversation a while back about this very subject, about the information age that we live in, and the fact that our cell phones can send messages to Mars and make coleslaw, as an example. But it's, to your point, I mean, we live in a time where we're drowning in information, but yet starving for wisdom.
Yeah.
And so, there's so much information out there. If you Google something, as an example, I mean, you'll get 10,000 different, content points on that.
And another way I would say the same thing is we're flooded with information and starving for perspective. How does this fit into my world or the greater perspective?
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. And I mean, that even goes back, this is not a new theory. I was thinking back to the Bible with the quote, you've been given an answer, but have rejected it. And so often we do that. It doesn't fit the narrative that we want, or we just don't know what narrative is truth. And we're living in a society of, well, my truth and your truth. Well, that defeats the whole purpose of truth. It's all relativism. And then it's just a simple lack of, there is no truth then. The second you introduce your truth and my truth and their truth, there's no truth. Because the truth is truth. You can't have different perspectives or relativism on truth, right? If the sky is blue, but you say it's orange and that's your truth, well, that's not truth. And we see that so often. At least I'll pick on the training industry for a minute in that context. Pick on the training industry. Me and my CQB instructors were just looking at a local training company, and they put out a video a day of their content, and it's awesome for them, and I'm glad they're doing their thing. And so these new students are making key mess ups, and they're applauding them, pulling a gun in a confined space while the instructors already are grappling them to the ground, missing 3 shots, getting their gun taken away. And the instructor's like, oh, you did a great job, patting him on the back and saying, they did a great job, because they finally got a round off and shot me after they've been shot 3 times. That is not real life. That's not truth. That's not a training video. And then the second someone with knowledge calls them out on that, it's, oh, well, they're new shooters, they don't know better. Okay, well, then don't produce that media out there to say, hey, this is what you should be doing. And then the second that you get called out, it's okay, well, we don't actually, the student's new. It's not what you actually should be doing. And it's like that across the board, whether it's in the training industry, that's what I can pick on, but it's like that in politics, in banking, in church, in any corporate America job. We are starving for, like Shawn said, we're starving for true knowledge. And instead, it's just based on feelings. And this whole country shifted on feelings and what feels good and what feels right and what feels truthful and what makes you feel good.
Everybody gets a participation award.
Exactly. I mean, look at what the military is shifting to. I mean, things like that. And so that's really why we wanted to make this podcast and we do not have all the answers. I'll be the first one to tell you, I don't have all the answers. I'm not the tactical God or anything. So we do just want to talk about some truths and really what I want to focus on for our podcast. And I'm sure that these guys agree is life. I'm not going to harp on the training content, for the whole hour and a half. I might do a little bit of training tips or what we've seen in classes, that week. And really we'll focus on just doing life and grounding it in the truth, which is the word, and grounding it in the truth as we handle some of these life topics together.
Going back to the to the training point that you made about, you've got training and it's training is serious and it should be taken serious. I'll say for myself, if I do something wrong in a training situation, I want to be called out. Yeah. And I think I think most people do. I think a lot of folks are looking for our truth or trying to figure that out. Yeah. And
what we're saying along those lines in corporate America, and in the training environment, the example you just gave, there's an extreme conflict aversion that's going on. And it's going on in homes between parents and children. It's going on in training schools. It's going on in corporate America. And that's where you get you did great, even though they might have missed half the lesson in what they did. As opposed to the old school, if you look at the Greatest Generation, the World War II, where drill sergeants would have physically beat the recruits. Okay, that's the other side of it, right? Yeah. So where is the happy medium where you have constructive criticism, where you have the backbone to give constructive criticism? Okay, you messed up here. You did good here, you messed up here, so that the student, the child, the employee gets the message, but doesn't feel like they've just been crushed with criticism. They have ego intact. That is a very fine balance that a lot of folks don't know how to do. Yeah. The best instructors know it. The best teachers know it. The best managers and leaders know it. But many folks just take the easy route, which is, I'm not going to say anything's bad.
Yeah. So years ago when I was in, I was a plant manager, manufacturing. And one of the things that I used to tell people is, hey, I'm going to catch you doing something wrong, and I'm going to tell you about it. And I'm going to catch you doing something right, and I'm going to tell you about that too. Mm-hmm. And because I care about you. And I think a lot of us, or I see a lot of that in corporate environments and in training environments, where if somebody makes a mistake, you got to give that correction. A correction is necessary. Do you break somebody's spirit over it? Absolutely not. So don't make it personal. Don't take it personal. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the key. Is to, if you care about somebody, you're gonna tell them when they do something right, and you're gonna tell them when they do something wrong, for sure.
It's what we were talking about earlier before we started recording this. Is Rodney was talking about godly husbands and godly fathers, and I was talking about the church, and exactly to Shawn's point. I think that we've seen that across society, and it's not just in corporate America or training. Now we're sitting here having this discussion. We're seeing that with godly fathers and godly men not disciplining their children, handling children that way, but then it's as well as the church. I was having a discussion this past week, actually, and it was, okay, well, I think the church has, on one side, it was the church has completely missed God's heart, and it's all, judgment, and it's repentance, and it's very, very far strict authoritarian, and it's
fire and brimstone.
It is. It's all fire and brimstone. And a student was talking to me this week, and he said, I just don't go to church because the churches I've tried, it's just way too saddening and depressing, and it's too fire and brimstone. And then we shoot to the opposite side, and if you ask me what God's heart is love. But I think it's love with discipline because he loves us and he wants what's best for us. But it's God is love, and it's pastor.
It's a rock concert.
It is, and it's. I heard God loves you just like you are. There's no need to change. He already accepts you just like you are. What
I love that, because I was reading something earlier, and it was to the effect of People will tell you that you're perfect just the way you are.
Yeah.
You're not.
Right.
You're just not.
Yeah.
And I think it's just that simple. And I think a lot of times we tend to overcomplicate things. I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about there's so much information out there. And I think we overcomplicate things when things really are pretty simple in themselves, which is you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. Yeah. But we can aspire to grow and to mature, through life. So
and, you can do that for yourself when you get older and you can reflect on your performance and draw comparisons. The younger folks, they need somebody to set that base, that expectation. And that's where it's getting to be a bit of a challenge.
What are you seeing, Ron, in your classes? So what would you say I know I've been to several classes, but demographically speaking, I mean, what age group of young men and or young women come to your class? I mean, what does that look like typically?
Yeah, we're predominantly male in our classes, and I'm thankful for a good core group of students that hang with us a lot of times. But I'm going to say men 25 to 45, and that's predominantly, I would say, 60-70% of our core training group, and it's exactly that. It's they're trying to work through some of these same issues. And that's one reason we want to start the podcast. I've heard so much recently from students going, hey, talk to me about this. Talk to me about church. Talk to me about Jesus. Talk to me about training. Talk to me about, man, how to be a godly husband or a godly, father. I don't have all answers, but I know where to find them, and so that's one reason we do want to have these discussions. You guys are much more of a wealth of knowledge on that than I am. You got some years on me, and or it's training. It's, hey man, a couple guys on the internet told me to buy this kind of tactical belt, and I came to class and now it's not working, and I spent $240 on all my accessories, and they're all garbage or Chinese knockoffs of something. Or it's, hey man, I came to class and I bought 5 cat tourniquets off of Amazon, and turns out that they're not real, after we break them in half in class. And I think a lot of times it's people, I was making notes earlier. I think people are lacking purpose. I think my generation, my age, students that I'm talking to on a normal basis, not only are they coming to us with training, issues, and that's awesome. That's why it's my 9 to 5. I'll teach you how to shoot and how to fight, but then I get home and it's those messages after. And I think that people are just missing truth, whether it's and wisdom and knowledge, whether it's in this industry or in life. I think a lot of guys are struggling for purpose, struggling for mission. A lot of vets that I train, I think they are doing the same thing. It's, they'll come take one class with us, and it's, hey man, can I come work for you? It'd be good to give back.
So if I could comment on that.
Sure, absolutely.
I think one of the things, I see a lot of is just through observations, and this could be at the Walmart, at the grocery store, or at a training class, or I've shot a couple of 2-gun matches recently, just getting into the fold and learning a lot about that. But one of the things I see is people want to belong. They want a sense of belonging. Yeah. And they will gravitate towards what makes them feel good. And they'll have a good experience. And it sounds like that's what you're describing.
And whether it's the tactical world and the 2-gun match, that's clearly a brotherhood there. By the way, Rodney's really scary at 2-gun.
My son's really scary.
And his son is really scary at 2-gun. But you'll find that I've been in motorcycle riding groups and great camaraderie and purpose there. Tactical groups, great there. Bank executive groups, camaraderie there. Everybody's kind of the same mind. But getting back to purpose, one of the best pieces of wisdom I heard, and it was from a bank CEO, was find your purpose. Find your what. What do you want to be? What do you want to do? Then, after and only then, can you go after your how and your why, all that, right? So, and that's where you can start, because you have this wide world, information overload, all these options, infinite options, really. And which way do you want to go? Well, I have some talent here. I enjoy this. This pays what I want, the 3-legged stool. You have to be good at it. You have to enjoy it. It has to pay you what you need. And once you find that purpose, then you can start putting the building blocks in place to get there. Whether that to be an elite soldier, or whether it be a preacher or an economist or whatever it may be. Once you find that, difficulty I had as a young guy is trying to determine with this world in front of me, which way am I going to go? And it was, honestly, it was achievement oriented. It was, what was I good at?
Yeah.
What was it easy for me to be good at something? So some people call that talent, right? I had a natural proclivity for. But that was because I was getting feedback, critical feedback. So you're not so good at this. Yeah. I'm obviously working twice as hard as the next guy to do this, i.e. calculus. So I was guided by that. And if you don't get those kind of critical messages, you're just going to say, well, I'm good at everything. What should I do?
Yeah. That and positive influences too.
And positive too.
Because one of the things that I heard you mention, were all positive things. It was, business person, preacher. But, here's the really scary statistic about like gang related activities, right? So let's take a step onto the dark side. Gang membership and people seeking out to belong to something. Yeah. So they slip into this thing that's the easiest thing. But some of the initiations are like, get shot in the foot with a 22 or take a beating from, 10 of the other guys in the gang. I mean, it just blows me away that somebody wants to belong to something so bad.
But the positive affirmation after they pass that is huge and continuous.
Yeah.
And every day you wear these colors. Yeah. You've gone through the initiation. You're tough enough, smart enough, quick enough, whatever it may be, to be part of this elite gang. And that's the way it's almost military in some ways. That's the way it is structured. And so it gets these young folks that maybe other things aren't working out so well. That's their group. That's their purpose. And it's fortunately,
which is sad.
Rough path.
Yeah.
Ronnie's been spiritually mentoring me a little bit. And he said a quote to me, and I wrote it down, that stuck. You said, your heart and soul is like a honeycomb.
Oh, yeah.
It's what you fill it with.
Yeah, you're gonna try to fill that hole with something. There's a void there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it comes down to, is finding that purpose. It's a void. When I came to Christ about 6 months ago, very clear picture, and it was just me sitting there and just struggling with some things. And it was a picture in my head, just a cup, and the cup had a bunch of holes stuck through it. And all of these different cups were pouring water into this cup, and the cup was never getting full. It was just pouring out of the holes.
Man, what a great image that is.
It is. Yeah. If that doesn't break you really fast, and you're going, okay, so I'm this cup, all these holes in it. The purpose and the voids, they're never going to get filled. And I sat there and thought, okay, just relationships failed, that kind of thing. It was just in a spot where I said in a small group the other week, I think that people come to Christ through trials and transitions. I think those are two main places where people later on in life end up having that transformation. It's when you've hit brokenness, and I was sitting there going, okay, just struggling with a lot of things and kind of lost my purpose, not in training and tactics, but relationship and life behind the scenes. And I'll be open and vulnerable here. And the perspective. And and so I knew, of course, my training, my guys, I have my guys, and but as far as future wife and family, and that just had hit a point of trial and transition. And I knew I couldn't keep going down the path that I was going down. And I thought, okay, and just hit a point of brokenness. So the picture of that cup was taken and shattered. And then it was rebuilt, and the holes were filled in. And I thought, okay, so you have to sometimes get to a point of brokenness where those holes can get filled in, and that purpose, that life, that calling for us can actually come up and get filled. And from the correct water source. That's what it comes from too. Instead of taking from other people's cups and draining from other people's cups.
And it's a tremendous feeling when that clarity comes through.
Yeah.
You know your purpose, you know the perspective of that and where it fits into the greater world and to your moral and ethical code and to your faith. And now you know, okay, I'm good at this. The three-legged stool, I'm good at this. I enjoy it. It pays me what I need. And now I can focus all my attention on that. Or maybe change direction entirely, say I'm going to go this way. But I know where this is going. And talking about saving energy, the cup losing the water, and you're constantly trying to fill it. Now you fill it once, and
Right.
you're off and running.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a tremendous feeling when you find that. A lot of people never do.
Hey, a lot of us, I heard a comment or saw a quote months back, and it said, most of us will live our entire lives strangers unto ourselves. You will know more about people, and people will know more about you than you know about yourself. Yeah, and I think that's so true, especially in this day and age where so many people, I see so many people seeking and searching.
Absolutely.
Constantly.
Absolutely.
So it's a constant seek and search.
There was a recent survey done of 2,000 people around the world about the Bible, about Christianity in particular. I don't know if you get a chance to read that. It was released last week. And some of the major statistics to come out of this were that younger folks, and I think really the age was 25 to 45 is what they were doing. 2,000 people, again, global, had quite a bit of faith and trust in the Bible and in Christ. They didn't trust the church.
Yeah, interesting.
So there's been this thing that Christianity is doomed. It's on a on a death spiral. It's getting fewer and fewer folks identify as Christian. But when you see the younger generation coming through with these kind of numbers, that the Bible and Christ are not the broken piece. It's not that they just trust the Bible and Christ. It's some of the interpretations. It's the human element, which the first thing the Bible says we're flawed, and we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to misinterpret, and we're going to. But it was a very interesting study in that a lot of folks jumped on it in the press and said, "See, this proves Christianity is going down." And then you dug into it, and it was like, no, really, there's quite a very strong base of young minds that are very interested in this, and that see the wisdom in it. Having a tough time. You talked about the differences between different churches, right? Having a tough time relating in a particular church. It's an interesting study.
I think that goes back to, and I'll cover a couple of topics here and get you guys' opinion on it. To me, this goes back to spiritual warfare. I think that there has been, since the 40s or 50s in America, an amazing campaign on two things, church and marriage, as far as spiritual warfare goes. And we've missed this whole point on spiritual warfare. I really never pay attention to spiritual warfare until a few months ago, and really have now been able to see a little bit more about the enemy attacks and God's hand versus the enemy's hand, and living in a fallen world and dealing with those spiritual attacks. And I've seen just recently so much come through where he's been attacking the idea of marriage, sanctity of marriage, especially in guys my age, as well as in the church. And I think the church message has kind of shifted. And then I think that the modern day mental cycle, the guys that I teach, I train, so my best friends, my age, I'm 28, so guys 23 to 33 are very adverse to marriage, or they have no ability to hold a steady relationship or choose wrong people. I didn't know how to love. I didn't know how to be in a long-term relationship, But I think that a lot of that was missing God in that equation. And I grew up in church. That's the sad thing is I completely grew up in church. If you would have asked me 7 months ago, saved about 6 months ago. 7 months ago, I'd have told you I was a diehard Christian following God's path and purpose and plan for me. The problem is you're so far down this road of just deception, right? And completely off track of what marriage was supposed to be, what God's idea of marriage is, in relationships. And that was my purpose. I was trying to find purpose, seeking my purpose. My purpose was get married, have a family, but doing it in the complete wrong ways. And I see a lot of kids in my age in church doing some of the same things as far as that goes. And the church missing the point. When I was growing up in church, it was say a prayer to go to heaven, because if you die tonight, you know where you're going. I do not see that written anywhere in the Bible, in the gospel. I don't see that anywhere. It's deny yourself, transform your life, renew your mind, have a new perspective, completely change your whole world, and follow me. It's not salvation for the sake of heaven. It's salvation for the sake of transformation here. And I think the enemy has attacked that, so we've missed the whole point. And I think this is the same thing in marriage. I think that he has attacked the way that we have seen marriage, and has, not to give the enemy credit, but has hit the vulnerabilities and transformed the mindset to where people my age aren't really getting married or aren't really in church. I saw a different study, but kind of the same thing, is people my age, about the same demographic. It was like 20 to 35 or 20 to 40, would like the idea of getting married, but are adverse to it right now, or not in a position to, or similar to how the church was. And if you think about the whole Bible and the gospel, it's about transforming hearts and minds. And it's a wedding story. It's a marriage story. It's, the original, we've gone so far from the original path and purpose of Adam and Eve's marriage, relationship, and then the relationship that they had with God before the fall. In the last 50, 60 years, it's been completely twisted.
Some of the things that I read in the Bible, and most of my Bible knowledge, I will confess, is Old Testament. It's what I'm studying. And that's much more fire and brimstone. There's many laws in Deuteronomy and the Numbers. What strikes me in reading this is the two things. One, Bible is the story of the human condition and all its flaws and glory. There is deception. There is, cheating on your spouse. There's thievery. There's loss of faith. There's murder, right? There's, worshiping false gods, right? Then there's all the good things. There's, eternal faith. There is loyalty. There is love. There is strength in arms. You look at the Exodus, and Moses was quite the general. And that's proven in historical records. This guy was using pincer attacks and hammer and anvil and blocking moves, stumbling around in the wilderness of the Middle East and Africa. And he was a very good general. So some of this is still studied in war colleges. And so the Bible is based in a lot of actual facts, for one. But two, it just shows, when you read through, what jumps out at me is that, folks forget and lose their way.
Yeah.
They can come back. But there's a constant ebb and flow. Seeing a lot of ebb these days, but that's the same. Kings. How many times did you see kings make the same mistake in the Old Testament? It's again and again. And then you get a couple of good kings that follow the word, and then another one goes bad, and then another one. And it's just it's a different problem, but somehow they fall down each time. No humans are perfect, and that's made real clear there. But we see the same things today, and that's what strikes me, is that they may call it different, maybe a different title, there may be some politically correct name for it, but it's the same challenges and issues in human nature that were around back then, are still being struggled with today, finding that truth, that perspective, that light to guide you, that where to go to when you're in pain, where to go to when the walls are crashing in, what is your foundation, what is your rock, right? They had it back then too. They probably had it worse. They didn't have air conditioning. People were living day by day.
Well, I think it goes back to going back to where you started, Ryan. and thanks for that, Shawn. But the spirit of deception, right?
Yeah.
And so the problem with deception is you don't know it because you're
right. You don't see the darkness in the darkness. You see darkness.
Exactly. And so light will always overcome darkness, but you have to position yourself, for that. But I think that there is a spirit of darkness. There is a spirit of deception, and we know this, that we battle not with flesh, but with principalities of darkness. And so I think I know that a lot of people are struggling right now because they are under a spiritual attack.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially these, the younger folks, and they got a lot of questions, but they don't have a lot of answers. And I think part of that is just the lack of handing down that wisdom. I think you're in a great position, by the way, to really have a positive influence on young men and young women. And I think the fact that you're doing what you're doing, especially in this platform, is phenomenal.
Yeah, if I can help anyone transform like I've transformed in the last 6 months, and the joy and the peace and the freedom from a lot of things I've struggled with for a decade, it's worth it to me. I wrote down something earlier. I said our goal for the podcast for these guys is to be a lighthouse, to keep people in the community from crashing into the rocks and the darkness, in the storms in life, to be a light, shine our light, to stand as a beacon of truth and illuminate the way, to stand firm and point people towards the one who can save them, and to help keep people safe and guided, whether that's emotionally, mentally, or physically, to empower and share, to live the way we should, be confident in our convictions, and grow in life together as iron sharpens iron, as we grow both in tactical knowledge and in heart. And so that's my goal for us, is to be that, and to shine that. And like I said, on this podcast for the next months, we'll discuss tactical topics. We'll discuss training. We'll dry fire. We'll do video breakdowns of self-defense. But then we're also going to talk about life together. If one of us is struggling with something, hey, I'll be the first one to tell you I'm struggling with something this week, and bring it to the panel, and hopefully get a little clarity and truth too. And then to me, that's what it's going to be all about. But Rodney was right about spiritual attacks and spiritual warfare. I was talking to a buddy, and he's a good SF buddy, and I help teach SEER and run a SEER class here through the school. And we were talking about how Satan attacks us, through our thoughts, and he plants a seed, and then he turns it on self, and then he lets your thoughts go with it, and then he uses the local community or your circle or the world start to interject and say, oh, see, it's not that bad. And see, everyone's doing it, so you should too. And it sounds a lot like DARE in school, but it's way more than that. It's, well, someone else agrees with you. He'll put people in agreement, and he'll make it all about you. And as he was sitting there explaining all of this, I'm going back thinking about my interrogation when I'm running SEER, teaching SEER. I'm running through and I'm going, that's exactly how we make people break in interrogations. I'll sit there and say, well, I'll plant that seed or I'll plant that thought. And then someone will start to break, and I'll bring them in and give them a slice of pizza when they've not eaten in 2 days. And I'll feed them a slice of pizza for doing good in front of everybody else. And it's amazing how just planting those ideas, playing that deception, well, we already know this, right? And how we go through this interrogation process. And I'll just start planting those false thoughts and start attacking them where they're vulnerable. And then I'll show them, we'll see, so-and-so flipped already. He already gave us the intel that we wanted. And look at his reward. And we see that in society, but the enemy attacks us where we're vulnerable. For me, it was past relationships. That's where I was vulnerable. I knew that. And that was the catalyst for darkness and destruction. And I would come to class and say, I'm living for Jesus. And if you looked at my home life and relationships, it was the complete opposite. It was trust issues and control issues and bondages to different things, and just definitely not active. But I think it all comes back to Satan hits us where we're vulnerable. And that's no different than the physical enemy too. The physical enemy hits us when we're vulnerable. If we think that we were attacked by random, most of the time that does not happen. If you look at how bad guys select targets, it's all heuristics. It's based on innate intelligence of animals. bad guys and felons in prison. If you show them video footage, and the Texas Department of Corrections did a great study on this. If you look at, they played video footage to lifers in prison murders, and they showed them 7 videos of a New York subway, 7 different clips, and said, who would you choose to attack and kill? And super high 70s, low 80s, depending on the which clip they showed, they chose the same person of hundreds and hundreds of people in these video clips. You can't tell me then that that's not chosen. It's predator mentality. It's the cheetah, sitting there looking at the gazelle and going, okay, well, I'm going to devour that gazelle.
The weakest in the herd.
Exactly. Or the one, the outlier's not paying attention, or the young or the sick, and so yes, like we need to definitely help you guys stay protected in that realm for sure, in the physical realm. And then we also have to understand that, we need to shore up our vulnerabilities, take training classes, study, buy gear, buy equipment, whatever the case may be, shore up our vulnerabilities in the physical. Yeah, and train more. Yeah, once we've done that, train more in our physical. But then I don't see people across the board really training in the spiritual warfare is I don't think hardly ever mentioned. I can look at sermons and listen to sermons and go to different churches, and I don't ever really hear the word spiritual warfare.
Let me jump in on that, Ryan.
Okay.
And here's the reason why I think a lot of that happens in the Western church.
Sure.
Because churches fundamentally in other countries, I mean, they're vastly different than the Western church. And I think I think you alluded to it earlier, and that is that we got some things wrong. We're doing some things wrong.
Yeah.
The spiritual warfare, I guess one question I have is, can you define it? So we hear about the devil.
Yeah.
We hear about spiritual warfare through social means, right? Education.
Yeah.
Social media,
political, abortion.
Right? So I think before we can really start discussing a solution or to combat the foe, kind of need to define it. And it's not real clear in my mind what spiritual warfare is.
All right. So I think the point I was going to make earlier was that I think in many ways the Western church does not agree with the spiritual warfare, even though it's clearly scripturally sound.
Yes.
And so a lot of people will say, well, a Christian can't be attacked.
Oh, I've heard that so many times, even since I got saved 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Well, now that you're saved, there's really no such thing as spiritual warfare.
And it couldn't be further from the truth. Right.
Yeah. That is crazy. And I've heard that so many times. I was talking about that a couple weeks ago. And yes.
But in this country, in the Western church, we tend to, a lot of folks, I think a lot of churches tend to believe just that.
Yes.
But I'm telling you, go to Uganda,
right,
and it's completely different. They are so aware of the spiritual influence and the demonic, it's running rampant.
Yeah.
Not to mention areas where Christians are actively hunted physically. I mean, it's
right.
So So the spiritual warfare to me is an interesting term, and I can almost relate to it more in a military sense. You're saying an interrogation,
for sure,
breaking the enemy's will to fight, et cetera, and so on. Psyops, psychological operation. But the spiritual warfare, who's your foe? What avenue are they taking? And how does it manifest? Is it something you feel at night? Is it something you get through a podcast? Is it something you get through your church? Is it an influencer on social media? Is it all those things?
Interesting.
And how do you build a defense if all those things are coming at you? I have a feeling, and you have a much better idea, Ryan, on this, and because you're younger and know all that social media stuff. I think it's coming in from a number of fronts, and it's a accumulation. It's a million bites of a gnat, right? It's not a one crushing blow. It's a bunch of mosquitoes. And it just wears away at somebody's faith. And that faith isn't necessarily being replenished or reinforced in the avenues they expected it to be, i.e. the church, something that wouldn't even admit to a spiritual warfare. It's just a thought.
Yeah, I think that from what I've gleaned recently, I think a lot of, at least my spiritual attacks, and if you go back to scripture, comes through our thoughts. I think that's his primary method. It's thoughts and lies. And you go back to scripture and find where Satan's primary weapon is lies. And that happens in our thoughts. And I heard somebody say this past Thursday, well, Satan can't influence our thoughts or read our thoughts or anything like that. So that can't be true. But if you go back to scripture, we see where that he can, affect thoughts and can insert lies and can hit us in that regard. And I think let's look at what led me down, in darker areas of my life was all the what ifs. And I think that's probably the hardest way that I was attacked, and those my vulnerabilities. That's where, if I'm going to go hit an enemy, if I'm in Iraq or Afghanistan, I want to hit an enemy. I'm going to scout. I'm going to I'm going to do all my recon. I'm going to sit back in my ghillie suit through my 27 power optic and check everything out, and then I'm going to choose the right timing. I'm going to choose the right places. If we're running a military campaign, I'm not just going to. That's why trench warfare didn't work. I'm not just going to run across no man's land into their trenches where they're dug in with machine guns. It just doesn't work. It's not effective. Look at World War I. I'm going to, that's why I love and teach guerrilla warfare based tactics. It's effective. It's hit and run, and it's where they're weak and at the weakest times. At least for me, it was thoughts and what ifs. It was, that's what led to the control issues or the trust issues or the things that I struggle with in life. It's, well, what if she's doing this, or it was my own thoughts would run rampant, and it's which dog do you feed? Do you feed the dog grounded in truth, or do you feed the dog that's grounded in the what ifs and the lies and the maybes and the everything you come up with in your head? Every what if is a figment of your imagination. It's not true. I mean, it's the whole thing.
So let's talk about the thoughts for a second.
Yeah,
so there's voices, and I often say you're going to listen to one or four voices every day. You're going to listen to the internal voice, which is the voice of man. It's your voice. It's usually a lie.
Right.
You're going to listen to the external voice, which is the world, which is social media and all those things. Right. Guess what? It's usually a lie.
Right.
You're going to listen to the infernal voice, which is the voice of the enemy of our spirit, the accuser of the brethren who accuses day and night, or you're going to listen to the eternal voice of God. And I think, being number one, you have to be cognizant that there are influences coming from different places.
Sure.
So that's first and foremost, is just understand that you are being influenced. And then the second thing I would say is to understand that you can only fill with a replacement. So if you have a negative thought, you're giving those negative thoughts, you're giving life to them by entertaining them.
Yeah.
So until you're willing to say, I'm going to replace this negative thought with this positive thought, and I'm going to go and I'm going to listen to the eternal voice of God in God's word, and that is going to be my replacement for that negativity, for that criticism. Whether it's self-criticism, which we often do.
For sure. The internal voice is 90% negative,
or the external criticism. Where somebody's criticizing us, unjustly or unwarranted.
And along those lines, and again, just something I heard in the corporate world that really struck me is, which gets to the same thing, happiness is a choice. So you see multimillionaires jumping out of windows. See people are living in poverty, smiling from year to year. Something happened in those two individuals. They made a choice to be happy. Okay? See folks that are quite poor, I guess, by Western standards. They're just they're loving life. They're just happy. Now, is that something in their DNA? No, they're just born happy. They have that advantage. Or did they make a choice? Say, somebody has my back. I'm not starving. I have a roof over my head. It might be a thatched roof, right? But I have a roof over my head. Okay? Make a choice to believe, and again, you can say, which wolf do you feed? The wolf of doubt or the wolf of no confidence? But it is a choice, and it's a choice constantly because you're always getting hit with, and folks can be, especially when you start getting into the corporate world and into competition, serious competition, you're going to get hit where you're weakest, to your point. And you can either dwell on that, or you can choose and say, you know what, but I'm still on my purpose, I'm still on my mission, and I'm confident in that, and I'll win over the long run. I'll fight the long fight, right? So it is a choice. Happiness is a choice. And that, I think, is where we're leading to with choose to refill with positivity as opposed to dwell.
So quit declaring what you're not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. First. So let's take it to tactics for a second.
Yeah, sure.
So I'll say this. 18th Airborne Corps Condo School. Tough school.
Yeah.
Ranger School. Tough school. Drill Sergeant School. Tough school. And all those environments and all those schools that I attended, and I know you did some tough schools as well, and I know you've done some tough training, but I think we'll all agree to one thing. There's always 3 or 4 guys that no matter how bad it is, just like, let's rock up.
That's
let's
right.
roll.
That's right.
I was thinking of the other 3 that complain about everything.
Oh, yeah, well, you've got those
Yeah,
guys
they're extreme. Yeah, for sure.
They're going to melt down, like 24 hours a day. Everything's terrible. And so I think it is a mindset, right? It's a mindset.
Sure.
You see it right there. And
yeah, we see it in the church. We see it everywhere.
Exactly.
That's so funny. Yeah. It is. It's either the guys who are just like, hey, you know what? It is what it is. Let's roll with it. And that's always why you say, it is what it is.
Rock up and let's roll. Yeah.
Exactly. And that is, and I think to go back to like spiritual warfare, and it's so like complaining is another big one. It's just thoughts. And it's scriptural that Christians should not complain. And I know that everyone's going to look at me and go, okay, but it's scriptural. It's in there. All right. So you can look it up later. If you believe the Bible, it's Christians should not complain. And why? We should be so grounded in truth that honestly...
it pushes the negativity
Exactly.
out.
A pastor said, he said, your life circumstances should never define letting your light shine. No matter what you're facing in adversity, your light should always be shining. It's easier said than done.
It is easier said than done. And I'll confess, in some of these schools, I was caught right in the middle. I was usually in a leadership role, and so I couldn't show any issues, but inside I'm like, man, it sucks. We're cold, we're starving, but couldn't show it, had to be positive, and that eventually started training my mind to say, this isn't actually that bad. This is going to get better. I'm going to get through this. But I was right in the middle between those, man, everything is horrible, and let's rock up.
Yeah.
And it was kind of expectations on me in those particular situations that made me choose, let's rock up. But it was, it's hard. It's hard.
It is. It is so much of this is a battle of mentality. Greg will be on the podcast later episodes. He is just amazing at the mentality of violence. And so to take it back to tactics, I was teaching a pregnancy center, pro-life pregnancy center this past Thursday, teaching active shooter response. They had a ton of death threats who just moved across from Planned Parenthood. And
interesting.
Yeah, I told them they just got hit with all kinds of attacks, physical and spiritual. And I told him, I said, I'm not the strongest dude. I'm not the toughest dude. I'm not anything. I am the meanest. And I can tell you that. I'm the meanest dude. And I said, all of you guys, if we pull out knives and we fight right now, I guarantee I'm going home. I said, that's your answer for all of you guys. I said, I looked at the smallest 5'1", 100-pound female. I said, between me and you right now, we get into it. Who's walking away? She said, well, you are. I said, no. It's a mindset. I said, you've already lost. I'm the third monkey on Noah's Ark, and it's starting to rain. I said, between me and you are going to win. She's like, okay. And I said, so say it out loud. She said, all right. And I said, if I pull a knife on you right now, we knife fight. I said, no matter my training, no matter my skill level, I said, your mentality has got to be, you're going home. We see that with law enforcement. We see that. I've watched law enforcement officers get shot and they just sit there and just give up all will and they just lay there. Put on your own tourniquet, slap your chest seal on, like pick yourself up, get behind cover,
Get in the fight.
Get back in the fight. It's gone are the days, like I say in my TAC med classes, gone are the days where you get shot, you lay down, you yell for a medic. No, like you have your own equipment. You can do anything. I've sutured myself up before. There's no reason that you cannot stay in the fight. It's a mindset thing. And so like if I'm teaching a SEER class, or it's my thing is I will not eat as much as you. I will eat less than you. I will drink less than you, and I will sleep less than you. That is my commitment to students when I step foot in class. And it's only so if anybody complains, then I can immediately go, no, hold on, whoa, you're not miserable, you're not anything, because I'm still good, you're still good. There's no reason for you to be that way. But I think we've missed that in life. A lot of that mentorship of, I had a good friend, and she called not too long ago, and she was just struggling with things going on in her life, and like a sister to me, and struggling with things going on in her life. And quickly, I like to remind her and remind people, and they don't like the way I help them anymore, and remind them, well, that's not a Jesus. That's funny. We're supposed to model ourselves after Jesus. I can't find Jesus being offended because their friend didn't go eat supper with them. That's just kind of strange to me. And then quickly you see the wheels start shifting and that mentality starts shifting. But it just comes back to letting our thoughts and minds run. And honestly, I think that most battles you guys are going to have in the physical, in the spiritual, it's all going to be mental. I think that it starts with mental and it usually ends with mental.
Yeah, there's an old saying, the mind controls the body. I think that kind of plays into it a little bit too. But definitely, going back to what we were talking about with technology and computers and things like that. So, the mind really is a computer. So there's hardware and there's software, right? So the brain is the hardware, and the mind or the thoughts or the software. And you can reprogram yourself.
Yes,
it's possible. May not be easy, may be difficult. There may be challenges associated with it because you've been programmed your whole life, and you've got this program that's being written continuously.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of folks, who have low self-esteem, have confidence issues, that are really struggling in life for whatever reason, it's because of bad programming. And so that kind of comes back to what we were just talking about, and that is that you have to reprogram yourself and think differently.
That's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's talking about easier said than done. So we talked about situations where somebody gets shot and yells for a medic, and instead of actually taking action on themselves, physical conflicts. Mine's the same way. Folks have been through a number of failures where what they did was not successful, at least in their mind. Maybe in the real world as well. Maybe they injured themselves, but there's mental scars there that have eroded confidence. How do you rescue that? How do you reach out at that point and say, listen, I'm wounded to the point here spiritually that I can't fix this. With the tools I have, do I reach out? And that's where I think, yes, reach out. Find a trusted source and reach out. So just to kind of draw a line that, we're not all going to be able to fix ourselves automatically with our issues. Sometimes, you are wounded and you need to step up and say, listen, I need help.
Yeah.
And in the spiritual realm, you can get it if you know where to find it. And that's a challenge too.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. It's going back to spiritual warfare and all of this. It just comes back to truth. I'll be open and vulnerable. I had some pornography addictions, and even up until a few months ago, getting saved. And since then, it was just since that day, it was all right. Water baptism, fresh start, new start. Just refuse to look at it. But how that ended up being changed and transformed was every time a thought like that would pop in my mind, or you're bored, you're sitting there. It was, God, I thank you that you've made me a new creation, and I'm not that person who used to watch out anymore, and I'm a new creation, and thank you for not giving me that desire anymore, and for healing me of that bondage. And you're rewiring your brain to the point now where never happened. Don't ever think about it, even just 6 months in. So no matter what that is, whether it's self or relationships, and Shawn brought these scars. The word trauma is thrown around so often right now in society, but you can say it is trauma of some kind. Like with me, it's failed relationships. It was the ex, whoever would cheated on me. When I carried that, the trust issues or the control issues in that next relationship, and then that next relationship, and that next relationship. And 10 years later, right, or 8 years later in my case, you're still sitting there with new relationship going, well, I have trust issues, and I have control issues, and that's just my trauma, and that's, I can't help it. It's because so-and-so did so-and-so. And then you're going down this, setting this relationship up for failure too, stuck in this cycle. But all it is, in my opinion, it's just deception. It's all it is. It's just deception.
So if I could, let me throw an image out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I heard this said. I've read a lot of books on bondage, breaking bondage, breaking strongholds.
Yeah.
Just finding biblical truth
right
in that process. And there was a book I read. I can't remember who the author was, but he described it as if you're laying on a table and you've got these chains that are over top of it. And I'm speaking like to Christians, people who know God and accept Jesus Christ as their Savior. But if you feel like you're in bondage, you feel like you're in chains, you're laying on this table and all these chains are over you, but the locks have already been loosened. There are no locks.
True.
So if you choose to lay underneath the chains, then you're going to be in bondage. But all you have to do is just simply stand up and shake the chains off. Yeah. Because Jesus has already done the work,
Yeah, and it's true. And I've heard a lot of people say, well, he can't relate. They didn't have pornography back then. Well, if you go back to Scripture, it clearly says he faced every temptation that we faced, every temptation, and still came out sinless. It is impossible for us. It's a fallen world, I'm not saying that you can never sin another day in your life for the rest of eternity. You never have. It's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is we have an example to look up to that already has faced those temptations, already has paid that price, already has unlocked the locks. Insert your scenario here. It's went through the same temptation. And then once we realize that, we're set free from it. My biggest hurdle, struggle, I'm all for prepping and teach classes on prepping. And of course I've got my SIG 229 here, everything that I carry and prepped and, fortify the house. However, what I never pay attention to was the enemy's attacks. I'm very good at the physical. I'm, prepared in that way. I was not preparing or prepared, and I'm still working on being prepared for the spiritual. And it was the key point I took away. I was like, all right, well, I'm free from that. Wipe my hands, got the victory, and I'm good. Okay, so then let's say new relationship comes along in 6 months, and what's to say that some of those thoughts won't start creeping back in? And just because you've got the victory doesn't mean that the enemy's not going to come back. And I think that's the biggest thing.
It certainly will.
And let's go back to Jesus in the wilderness. Like, let's use Scripture to back that up. So Jesus went through every temptation, and his temptations were targeted, just like they will be against us, targeted. And at the end, Jesus defeated him. And it says, go back to the story of the wilderness, last sentence is really what drove it home for me. And it was, and he will return at a more opportune time.
Exactly.
So he's already, okay, so you just crushed him. Awesome. Like, I got it for day 365. That's awesome. But day 366, or it might be a more opportune time and place, and it's going to be targeted. So we need to be, yes, please take classes and start training and preparing for the physical for tomorrow and the physical, but as well as the enemy attacks and spiritual. And that's something I failed. I'm all for preparedness, and I'm very prepared in my physical work every day. But for the spiritual, that wasn't even a thing. I didn't read the Bible or do it or control thoughts. It was the exact opposite.
Well, God will always give you, there's always a way out, right?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
whenever you find yourself, whatever your struggle or your addiction, whether it's, alcohol or pornography or whatever that might be,
Yeah.
I think the thing to recognize is that you can always just stand up and shake the chains off. You can always walk away from it.
It's a choice, yeah.
It is a choice, and God will always give you a way out. But you got to lean not on your own understanding sometimes, and and actually take the yoke, take the yoke of God. So,
yeah, to your point, it's exactly true. I think that a lot of people miss the fact that the God in the Bible is still the same God today. And, we saw all the miracles in the Bible and all the transformations, but that stuff still happens today. We're still a part of that. It's not changed. I think that was a big issue I had as far as relations. Trying to relate it back was just that mental block of, it's a book. Okay, it happened 2,000 years ago, but it's still just as active. It still serves as our it's still living today. It's still activated today. And I was sitting there talking about some things I was struggling with, and the pastor looked at me and said, well, the greater the fight, the greater the victory. And I thought, so it's not signed, the greater the fight. All right, well, I'll just give in this time. When that's what I always did. It was such a compromise. And one of the guys that works, one of the instructors here, he said, well, you wouldn't compromise with the enemy, right? In the physical. I'm like, no. Like, we don't mess with that. Like, I'm the meanest dude there. I promise you, I'm going to pull your carotid out and eat it, just to prove that I am a little bit crazier and a little bit meaner than you. And that's a true story. That you don't just, you chew it up and swallow it just to prove a point. And he's like, well, why are you compromising in everything else? And it's so easy for us to be in this warrior mentality, of, well, I've made it through X, Y, and Z, and I've got this X, Y, and Z resume, and I've done, this, and, in my mind, so, dude, like, I'm the meanest guy there is, and I'm equipped and I'm trained, and I'm always a student. Don't get me wrong. I'm always learning. I go to training schools. I teach, listen, because I always want to grow and learn in the physical, and was not doing that in the spiritual or in the mental. This is the same dude who's like, hey, I'm going to chew your carotid up and swallow it. The same guy lecturing Green Berets on how to be mentally prepared and mentally aggressive and mentally in the fight is the same dude going home and looking at now current X going.
And even working in psychological apps, which is
I have
more relevant.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, playing mental tricks, playing the enemy, and then coming home and looking at now current X going, all right, well, like, are you alone? Snap me, share your location, like, snap me to make sure that you're alone, just because you didn't reply in 5 minutes. Struggling with that mentally, yet am lecturing on, and teaching on how to be strong physically. It doesn't, it's just funny how we compromise. We dine, a pastor heard said, dine with demons in certain meals of our life. And I think that,
or focus on what we're good at and leave all the rest.
Yeah,
and so the
that's
balance
true.
appears so critical that you can't ignore it. Right?
Well, we do live in a deeply comparative culture. I was talking with somebody just earlier tonight about comparative culture, and we're constantly comparing our insides to other people's outsides, which is the worst thing to do. Ever possibly do. Because Ron, if I were to compare myself to you, let's say we're a day of training, a training day,
sure,
and man, you're tearing it up. And I'm comparing myself to you.
Yeah.
But what I don't see is what you just revealed, is that I'm struggling on the inside.
Right. Yeah,
I've got this skill set, but I'm struggling on the inside.
Yeah.
But yet I'm comparing myself to you.
Right.
And it's just, I think a lot of that has to do with what you alluded to earlier, and that is social media. You've got,
just chipping away. Yeah.
Yeah. You got Facebook and Instagram, and you name Twitter. You name it. There's just so many things out there. So I'll tell this real quickly. Years ago, there was a girl had shared a photo with me. A friend of my daughter's shared a photo with me and she was at a party. And the comment I made was, she was never at the party. She spent the whole night. I'll guarantee you, she spent the whole night, taking photographs, trying to find the right one. She was never there.
Sure.
She was, obviously, completely consumed with getting that absolutely perfect photograph to post.
Sure.
To say, look what I did.
Yeah.
But never.
Not experiencing it.
Exactly. But never experiencing it. Exactly.
For the selfie. Yeah.
That's training.
So out of context.
Yes.
Out
training
of context.
classes, just like it. I have guys that show up and they're there for the experience. They're there. Oh, your range doesn't have concrete, floors for us to lay on. No, get your butt in the red dirt. Like you're going to be dirty. Your gun's going to get dirty. I want to see if it fails or not. It's muddy and then they're taking all their Instagram pictures before they go get dirty, or they'll get dirty like, well, this is going to make me look cooler on Instagram. Dude, just shut up and shoot. Like, let's actually get your dope. Yeah. Like, and that's, these, in the industry, there's instructors who, they'll have photographers and drones fly in, take pictures of their classes. And that's awesome. That's awesome. I'd rather charge.
Good, but if that's the focus.
Sure. I'd rather charge $50 less per student to make more students. That's what we do. We don't have drones. We don't have photographers. I might snap a couple pictures on my phone during lunch break. I'd rather charge $50 less and not pay a drone to come out here or a photographer to come out here, so then more students can take the class for $50 cheaper, or take more classes, and then.
So if it doesn't add value, it's unnecessary.
Exactly.
Right.
And then a rival instructor, well, they're too cheap, so they must not be any good. No, we just don't have a photographer come out to class, and therefore overhead's less, so more people can train. I think that we miss our industry, any industry, the church. I think that we miss the purpose. We so often in life, and that's, I'll go back to my relationships. It was, I knew the girl I was with, a couple exes ago, I knew I couldn't trust her. I knew how she was, but you're holding on. She'll share a location. So that just means it's a step. That means that I can trust her more. And it's a temporary fix to a permanent problem. No, she needed Jesus, and so did I. Like, that's honestly what it was. You couldn't trust her, but it was, well, I could, that's a small fix that buys me another month. Was the whole purpose a long-term relationship? Was the whole purpose to fix today? And it's like that across the board. People, it's vets with PTSD, and they'll call me and say, hey, dude, well, I did this today. Well, it's great, but what are we doing for tomorrow? What are we doing for a month from now? And I think we just are so used to such a culture who misses the purpose altogether, or it's putting a temporary solution for a permanent problem because it's easy, or it puts up that front of, well, I'm okay, it's okay. See, we have drones at our classes taking pictures, so we're delivering high quality content. No, it doesn't mean anything. It's what's on the inside and what's at the core root. And this is a society that never focuses on the core root.
Well, it's a microwave mentality. So it's, it's, I can put a bag into a microwave and press a button, and in 3 minutes I have popcorn.
It's the quick fix.
It's the quick fix.
And also perceived value. So what these schools are doing with the drones and things like this and fancy photography is they're trying to create perceived value. They feel like the students can look at these videos and determine if it's a good school.
Sure.
As opposed to actually going and experiencing the school. And I think your students would say, once you experience Apex and what it has to teach, that's why you have some 85% return rate.
Yeah.
And because the education, the actual quality of the training is excellent. Yeah. Is it fancy with all the flashbang? No. Is it actually quality training you can go home and use and practice and improve your skills in a material way? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we miss. I heard a sermon. I wrote down some notes. I heard a sermon couple weeks ago that really hit me. And the pastor was saying that there are are three types of Christians. And as that sermon was being explained, I thought, no, it's not just Christians. There's essentially three types of people in the country, outside of even Christians. The three categories was the deceived, category 1, the depressed and defeated, category 2, and those who still believe in truth and power, which is the small category, number 3. And I thought, no, because across the board, the deceived, it's the value, the meaning, the purpose. Take abortion, for instance. Pre 6 months ago, I would have said, and I'll be honest, I would have said, well, abortions is not, I don't agree with it, but, and I'm a sensitive topic here, I don't agree with it, but, I think in certain cases of, X, Y, and Z, or if, it's here or there, then I think it's fine. Well, then once you start to look at God's power and planning and timing and creative life and creative value, and honestly, if you go back to Scripture, none of our lives are our own anyway. So that fetus is, my body, my choice. Well, technically, you're not even made for you. You're made in His image and creation. So, and then the fetus isn't yours at that point either. And we could argue that, and I'm sure I'll hit some buttons. I'll push some buttons here. So get new buttons or go buttonless. Maybe you should put on a hoodie instead. But and so I think we miss the value of things intrinsically, no matter what it is. And abortion is just one of those. If you look at politics, people my age, just a new study with the elections, and I'm sure we'll talk about elections before this is over. But they just did a study, and it was different states. People my age, if you looked at some of like Florida, it was the economy was the number one issue. It's what's affecting them. If you look at California, of course, number one issue, climate change. And it's all of this that goes on, and every state almost had every state demographic based on how they voted. You could tell almost had a different answer as to what was the most important. Well, how can we be living in the same country, yet there's 50 different responses on what the most valuable topic is? Some of them are even off by like 3 or 4 topics. I just think that we all have our values assigned at different places, and therefore I think we miss the value. So I think we are in the deceived. More people are in the deceived category than I think they are.
It sounds like tribalism.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
That's such a tough subject, because who's doing the accusation of being deceived?
Right.
Many of those folks will look at you and say you're deceived.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So and they can bring facts and figures as to why you're deceived.
Yeah.
Right. It's perception, and perception of your reality. I'm going to take a jump over to some of the values in the Bible in a broad scheme. Okay. So I'm not as pious and well-read in the Bible as probably either one of you, but some of the messages I've looked at in the Old Testament, even in the New, there are certain values, and you can call it the 10 Commandments. Those values are key to the success of any society that has sustained itself for any length of time, whether it's Christian or not. So, before the Bible, you want to look at the Egyptians? Murder, stealing, cheating, prostitution. Okay, prostitution was always there.
Yeah.
And soldiers and prostitutes. But there was basic common laws that held these societies together.
Yeah.
Christians embrace those, and when those common laws go, or when they're questioned, and those basic common sense tenets are eroded, the society falls. Look at later Rome.
Right. Yeah, that's the first thing.
The corruption, the lying, so once those tenets, those moral tenets, I call them moral tenets, they're common laws, but they're also moral tenets. Once those are eroded, society will fail. That society will fail. It'll crash. There's a power vacuum. It'll be rebuilt. 9 times out of 10, those tenets are reestablished, and that society succeeds. there's a crash and burn. It's almost like you could call it like forest fire, and then the next forest that grows healthy and strong. And this is repeated through so many times through history. You see the decay of each empire. And at the center of that decay is the abandonment of these principal values that you see in the Bible. The Christianity, the values of Christianity are key to me because they're key to successful society and a community of people that are successful and interact with common boundaries. America still has most of those tenets intact. You can see where some are eroding.
Right.
Clearly see erosion in some of these, but it's still mostly intact. But that's just a thought on kind of, as far as deception, where does somebody sit with those basic tenets?
Yeah, I think so. Beliefs, values, morals, ethics, right?
Right.
So I think one of the things I've watched, and particularly I think over the last 2.5, 3 years, I think we can agree that it's been a turmoilistic time.
Yes.
So
moral depravity comes to mind.
Exactly. So I think a lot of things came from that. Tribalism won. I mean, all of a sudden, you were either this or that.
Sure.
By one issue.
Yeah, by one issue. Yeah, exactly.
Put you entirely into a different.
So you're either this or you're that. You're either you're red or you're blue. You're black or white. And unfortunately, I mean, the world just doesn't work that way. So it is beliefs, values, morals, and ethics. And it comes down to having that foundation. One of the things I've seen is that the definition of what that actually means is that's the difference. Mm-hmm. So back to relativism, I think kind of comes back into play. But clearly, I think the last couple of years has really been a turning point for a lot of people, and a lot of people have moved away from certain value systems because it doesn't fit the narrative or doesn't fit the group that they feel like they
identify with.
Yeah, they identify with.
I totally agree with that. And then that brings me back to the 3 categories. So then my answer is, or question rather. So then I've asked in class recently, since I heard that sermon last 3 weeks or so, and it was, all right, guys, well, what are we going to do about it? And the instant response has been, well, there's nothing we can do about it. It's past our control. It's X, Y, and Z, which goes back to category number 2. Let me read it again. The depressed and defeated. Oh my gosh, And so these notes I made about our 3 categories, the deceived, the problem is, and I was falling into that one category as of, 7 months ago, made a great point, a great quote. If you're not in discernment, you're in deception. That hit me hard, right? Because, I think a lot of people don't, the problem with deception is you don't know you're deceived, like we said earlier. So that could be political. It could be just not realizing who the enemy is. Your enemy is not Joe Biden. Your enemy is the spiritual warfare, corrupt powers, and there's so much that goes past Joe Biden. I heard a student in class about 3 weeks ago. And so if somebody would just take him out, the country would be a whole lot better. What fantasy land are you living in? A, that would not solve anything, and B, you have to understand that the depth that the spiritual warfare, the deception that the corrupt powers that be has gone is so deep.
And some would say, do that with Donald Trump.
Right? Well, exactly. Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
We did not arrive here overnight.
Yeah.
These individuals didn't deliver us here overnight. Right. This is a gradual slide. I'm sorry, I used a negative term there, but it's a gradual movement in a direction.
Right. Yeah.
So,
well, that's the problem with drifting as well.
Exactly.
So,
yes.
I always think of you're in a boat and you're fishing and you're casting and reeling and all of a sudden you look up and you look around and everything looks completely different.
Right.
And so it's like, how did I get here? How did I? Well, you drifted, and drifting happens really slowly, and so you don't recognize until all of a sudden you look up and you look around and you don't recognize anything around you.
Right, exactly. And that's why I said I would have told you 7 months ago, I'm a great Christian and hadn't read my Bible in 4 years or something. was not living, if you actually look at what a Christian is, it's Christ inside of you. Well, I mean, in class and the way I handle my students and communicate with students, I'm very much a people person. I would have sat down and helped them through anything. But in my own personal life, in my personal decisions, that wasn't being affected. And so, you could say it is in deception, but you don't think that you're in deception. You don't think you're in darkness until finally it's revealed in this great miracle of transformation. And then, then you realize how in darkness it was. That's my struggle with students and guys, good friends that I'm with and teach and work with on a daily basis, is so many of them are going, yeah, dude, marriage is failing, or, dude, struggling with this or struggling with that, or, the country's this, the country's that. Name their problem here. They don't ever realize that they've drifted, or that they're in deception, or they're not seeing it as a spiritual attack, or they're taking circumstances personally. Or I had a student a couple weeks ago just gave his life to Christ, and and he called me about 3 weeks later. He said, "Well, I'm just not feeling that close to Jesus today, and I just feel like I'm just kind of going backwards." And I was like, "Man, but your feelings are not facts." And he said, "Well, I caught myself going back to a couple old habits. I just don't know if that really works." And I'm like, man, the deception, the roots, the instant gratification of this society, everything goes back to deception. It goes back to, just that thought, him making that phone call. And I'm glad he did, but it's the typical, hey, dude, I'm struggling with this. Keep me in prayer. I'm going to need you to dive in a little bit. I'm going to need you to fix this. And I'm going to need you to put on some truth and get a different perspective and, see the way you're supposed to see that. And I think that's our problem in society nowadays too, is we just lack that clarity.
I think, to get back to your question, what do we do about it?
Yeah.
If there is a slide, is it too far gone? Is there any hope? First of all, there's always hope. And that goes back to you saying, you're the one going to be the last man standing, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you're never going to give up the hope that things can improve.
Yeah.
I think and certainly the military perspective, leadership by example. Why do you think these folks are calling?
It's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Why do folks call either one of us?
Yeah.
Right? They've seen you've prevailed through, and nobody's perfect, right? We've all prevailed through some serious issues, right? Yeah. And had moments of weakness, and got up off the ground bloodied, and okay, let's take another run at this wall, and it's but when they see that you've prevailed through that, and that you've learned from it, right? There's some wisdom there. That's what I think is going to create. When I look at the folks that I believe in, that I followed, that I started to model myself after, it would be these folks that I knew had been through at least as bad stuff as I've been through.
Yeah.
And they were very successful, and they had it in perspective, and they had the foundation. So, okay, now this is somebody I can look at, and I think if I follow their methods, that I would be successful.
Yeah.
And whether it was their faith, or whether it was their strength, mental strength, discipline, ability to make that choice to be positive. Some of them might not have been that successful. I'm talking about the banking world. Maybe they weren't that successful. They're incredibly happy. Mm-hmm. And they've been through all sorts of adversity, whether it was health issues, financial issues, family, you name it. And they're happy. It's like, well, they've been through twice the nasty stuff I've been through. And they're happy. Well, I'm over
because they don't let the circumstances around them affect the attitude within.
Right.
So,
it was an example of strength.
So what you're saying, I call that the 4 C's. So it's courage, competence, commitment, and candor. Candor being honesty. So courage is both, spiritual, mental, physical courage. Competence is, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, striving for improvement constantly. Commitment, always being committed to accomplish the objective or accomplish the mission,
Right.
and then candor, honesty in everything you should do. So I always think about the full armor of God. Where does it start with? The belt of truth.
Right.
So truth and honesty.
That's so funny because I'm going to pick on myself for a minute. In the last couple months, I've had some times where I've been depressed and defeated, where I'm like, man, I'm just not,
wallowing in your misery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The ex isn't coming back, or I'm struggling with this, or I'm struggling with that, and I've even texted you a couple times recently, if I'm just being honest, and I'm texting Rodney, I'm like, hey man, he'll check on me. He's awesome. He's like, hey man, how you doing today? It's like, oh, I'm just kind of feeling this way. I mean, I'm saying that out of honesty for me. I'm telling you guys, picking on you guys because I'm picking on myself. I need to hear it. And he's always the first one to message you back with some type of something related to truth. It doesn't matter if it's a journal entry or a scripture. And I'll be like, yeah, man, just struggling today, and the typical response that we get. And he's always the first one to come back, and it'll be like a picture of a journal entry. And it's something like, just stay grounded in truth. And, it's compassion and it's love, but it's also example. And it could be an old journal entry. Sometimes I see it's, halfway through your journal, and it's okay. Well, like, you're not alone. And clearly he's gotten through it, and he's not backslidden or whatever you want to call it, So part of it is
careful on that one.
Yeah, but we need that example too. Just like Shawn said, I think the people who are shining their light, we are so quick to not shine our light in circumstances, and people notice when you do, and it's attractive, and I think that's the whole point of it. Is you have something that they don't. It's not. People see that you're happy in your circumstances. People see that you are grounded in truth, and people see you maybe struggle. Yes, you're still going to struggle. Yes, the enemy's still going to attack you, but maybe you handle it a different way. Maybe there's a different response. And I think that's been my biggest thing with thoughts and things too. It's even go back to scripture. If you don't have an example, Jesus is supposed to be your example. So if you can't find Jesus handling it that way, maybe you should not handle it that way either. And just some truth for you. But find somebody. I think it's been a big thing in the last 6 months for me, is finding guys like you two, a little older, a little wiser, and having that mentor, or having someone that I can go to that's grounded in truth, and biblical truth, not worldly truth, because worldly truth is not really truth. It's worldly knowledge, which is based on
testing your truths in the world is key.
Okay, explain that. Elaborate on that.
So you don't learn to drive in the parking lot, right? So you have your structure, your truths, your moral code.
Okay.
And you never take it out of your comfort zone. You never leave your hometown.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we've all traveled. We've all been in some very different societies.
Very
right?
much so.
even some different value systems in those societies.
Very much so.
And you see how your values stack up there. How do they work there? When people don't follow those values, how does it look? But again, your values are not tested until you go out into the world with them. Which is, you say worldly knowledge, which I know in the Bible, worldly is kind of like dirty.
Yeah.
I think
carnal, yeah.
Carnal, yeah.
Yeah, carnal, yeah. I think getting out in the world is key to see to reinforce that your values are good and they can sustain you. And almost any society, if you are honest, you don't cheat, you don't write. Again, like giving back to those tenets of Christianity, of successful society, you'll be fine. But you won't know that till you get out there. I think experience in the world is key.
Well, there's an old saying, it's okay for the boat to be in the water,
right,
but it's not okay for the water to be in the boat. And so, so kind of to your point, I mean, you do have to get your boat into the water, and the water is the world in which we live in, and it is rocky sometimes. It's a difficult place. There are going to be challenges. There's going to be disappointments. But Romans 8:28, I always think about all things work together for good to those. And so look that up, read that. Romans 8:28 is a good one. But so you're going to have difficulties. You're going to have challenges, and Scripture never says if; it says when.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was in a small group recently, and somebody said, and I brought up the point that people do usually turn to Christ or get their life right in tribulations, trials, and transitions.
Mm-hmm.
We brought up the point about storms. It's funny you said, and I think it's what Shawn's getting at. It is so all well and good. I'm working on being a better, future boyfriend or future husband, but let's say if I don't work on that, I don't harbor those to fill in those gaps that the enemy can use. Let's say if I got into a relationship tomorrow, right, without building up that foundation, being grounded in truth. What I think Shawn's point is, if I never get back into, if I'm scared to get back into a relationship, how will I ever know, right, that my values have changed, that I will be a different boyfriend or whatever?
Yeah, untested.
Yeah. And I think that, right, and we were talking about storms and how storms really aren't a bad thing. If I go back to the ex, walking out 6 months ago, started this whole journey, when I hit brokenness, I was so mad that she did, but now I can go back to a point where I can say, I wouldn't trade her walking out for anything, because of where it's led me. And the small group leader, interesting point, said we're so quick to pray for people's blessings, but imagine praying for your loved one to encounter a storm.
Mm-hmm.
That's deep. That is so deep, in a loving way, not I hope, they have a car wreck on the way home. It's not what he's saying, but, imagine praying, or just thinking, man, I hope that they hit a point of brokenness that God can make a new cup. That's.
Oh Lord, I think we have. We could probably share plenty of stories where, you grow up, you have a set of values and perceptions. And really, when I was around your age, and I was just getting body blow after body blow.
Sure.
It was, my perceptions and how I was going to succeed in the world and my trajectory and my great plan. I was just getting beat about the head and shoulders. I was getting, there was no friends. There was nowhere to turn. Work was brutal. I was infighting at work. All this stuff. And so, wow, what a wake up call. Mm-hmm. And that. There was no way to solve this by reaching out. Mm. It was hostile out there. Yeah. The only way to solve this was to reach in and harden those defenses. Yeah. Confront those weak areas. I got this weakness, and sit there and tell myself, I am trying to reach out for friendship and emotional support to people that are my rivals. They're turning it around and weaponizing it, and not only beating me up in the company, beating me up emotionally. I said, so I'm losing on both fronts. I'm losing in my aspirations. I'm losing emotionally. I'm losing self-esteem. I said, this has got to stop.
That brings us to category 2. Like Shawn was saying, people who weaponize it, and me texting Rod, him coming back with truth. It brings us back to category 2, right? Depressed and defeated. I think that's with current events. It's where I can be sometimes, not just in relationships and things, but in the United States. So let's go back to the election. Definitely not the red tidal wave.
Is the election over? I didn't know.
They're still counting in some places.
Yeah,
magically more blue votes are turning up when they're needed. It's crazy how that works out. Strange.
Still haven't determined the House.
Yeah, still not determined the House. Still iffy on the Senate. Yeah, it's a mess. But the election, I heard a couple guys come back and they're like, man, I don't know what to do. The election like we wanted, there wasn't a red tidal wave. I guess the country's hopeless. Right? I guess there's nothing we can do. Okay, well, I think it looks like we're going to take the House, the red side. Looks like blue side could probably hold on to the Senate, but nothing's been for sure called yet. And so I do think that quickly we can go depressed and defeated. When the ex left, I went to some friends and even a couple pastors that I greatly respected for advice. And the answer that I got was, oh, it's hopeless. There's no hope. Don't have faith in God restoring that relationship or bringing her back. That door's closed. It would take a miracle. And what's the likelihood that would happen? It would take forgiveness. And what's the likelihood that would happen? I heard a lot.
Everything.
A lot thrown at me. And so, there was that feeling of hopelessness, but then still having faith going, recently saved. Yeah, I know that he can, and then that shifted. I'll be open and honest. Even recently, it's still having hope that he could restore that relationship or still having hope that he could and can, but without making that my goal for change. And I think that we have to be careful if we want change even in the country. What is our motive? What is our goal? Is it that our side wins? Because anytime you start playing victim-villain, there's quickly no winner. And so, if we look at, it's not the change that we wanted. Well, I'm going to check the motives here and say, okay, well, what is the change that you wanted, and in what truths are you basing those changes, or your perceived truths? Are you basing those changes? And I think that's something that we need to think about in regards to the election. But things could be a whole lot worse in this country than they are. We're not being persecuted,
and they have been a whole bunch worse in this country than they are now.
I'm going to say COVID. Even COVID was worse. You had government shutting down churches and shutting down businesses and people going hungry and supply chain. Let's look at how certain people handled the COVID crisis.
Look at the Great Recession.
Yeah.
Now, of course, my background in the Federal Reserve, I know just how close we were. The global economy was really on the teetering edge.
Yeah.
And the Fed basically bailed out the global economy, not just the American,
right.
The whole bloody capitalistic system.
Yeah.
Kept it liquid, kept money moving. And now let's go back further in history. Let's look at the Dust Bowl.
Yeah.
Let's look at Spanish flu. 1 out of 4?
Yeah.
And dead. So this country's been through some brutal times. A lot of the pain we're seeing here is self-inflicted, right? And it's this cultural, this division. You're in this camp. You're in this camp. We're not going to even talk to each other. That's what's scary.
Yes.
Is reasonable discourse has always been part of American political system. Even when things were sharply divided, at least the people at the top would get together and talk about it. Now that's kind of breaking down. So a lot of the injuries are self-inflicted, but as far as danger to society, and I hear a lot of elderly folks, which we're getting in more and more touch with these days, are basically saying, I got lucky. The next coming is any day now, and I'm just about out of here, so we're good. You guys are all screwed. And I'm like, what kind of self gratification is that? It's like, I'm 85 years old and I've lived through the best 85 years. America's gone tomorrow, but you guys will have to deal with that. So there's some of that going on too, right? So
faith, trust, and confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have to. Everybody has to maintain that. And whether you prefer red neckties or blue neckties, whatever camp that you tend to migrate towards or to identify with. It's miserable is always a self-inflicted wound as well. I wanted
that's the choice,
to make that comment. So if you're unhappy about it and you're miserable, then do something about it. Get involved. If you don't like your current local politics, as an example, run for office. Sure. Or don't complain. Or get involved somehow.
At least vote.
Get involved somehow. And, I'll say something controversial. I'm not a huge fan of Trump. I'm not that guy.
Okay.
And he wasn't my guy, in
the primaries.
Yeah, exactly. So, do I think he did a lot of good things for this country? I absolutely know he did. There were some good things that came from that administration. Hopefully, some good things will come from the Biden administration. I hope so. I tend to be more, I lean more, talking about elections, I definitely lean more conservative.
Sure.
I've always been registered as a Republican, but for the sake of this conversation, I'm actually probably going to change that. I'm going to be unaffiliated.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
I'm a constitutionalist.
Okay.
Because A, I don't even believe in political parties to begin with. But B, you brought it back, it wasn't designed, and in fact, a guy, if you want to talk about who started political parties, his Bible is on display in his own house, and most of the Bible has been stripped out with an X-Acto knife. So
because he cut out all of Jesus' quotes.
Yes, he cut out everything he didn't agree with.
Yeah.
That's the type of person that we're talking about, start political parties. I'm with you. I think that Trump did a lot of great things for the country, but he was not my original guy. I, controversial here, greatly respect Vladimir Putin. Not because I think he's a great human. Would I shake his hand? No, I'd probably try to punch him in the throat. I think he's made a lot of poor choices. I don't think he's a great stand-up individual. However, he's a phenomenal leader who does a lot of really good for his country when, he has his hands, when his hands aren't tied by an oligarchy and everything else that's going on. I'm totally with you. I think that a lot of students right now, what they're struggling with, and I've heard is, and what we're struggling with. So we are struggling as a business recently. We last year I trained 1,200, 1,300 people. We're probably going to hit 900 this year, somewhere in there. And the decrease has been It's Facebook algorithms.
Oh, wow.
It has been the suppression of our posts, and even our church has seen that, the suppression of their posts, anything with guns, conservative, Jesus, this podcast, I'm sure, will just be nixed across everything because it's going to have a mix of it all. It has been, so suppressed. And these new algorithms just are such an attack on a key demographic of the society.
And your First Amendment right.
Yeah, it's corporate attacks.
Yeah.
And then the FBI recently, it was actually, I have the number here, federal agencies, 19 federal agencies went back and pushed Metaverse to actually be more suppressive of things that didn't fit their agenda. So you have, first of all, most people don't even know there's over 19 government agencies. So let that sink in for a minute. And I've had the fortune of working with most of them, either training their guys or through counterterrorism or something. And so the guys on the ground are great people. It's the guys up in Washington are horrible, and we don't like them, but they're the ones that are pushing. So now you have government agencies pushing corporate America, who control the media, to then push an agenda. That's the definition of corruption.
It's state-run media.
It's state-run media at that point to suppress a certain demographic. That's essentially like saying you no longer have a right to vote because you believe in Jesus. You're not far from that across the board. And so my problem, they even, by the way, the 19 federal agencies gave one example in particular. It was a report that became unclassified. One example in particular was an Afghanistan soldier's mom, whose son was killed in the botched Afghanistan withdrawal. She was making Facebook posts, and the 19 government agency report to Metaverse included her specifically in the report as things that should be suppressed. That kind of blows my mind, and we're getting in a very dangerous slippery slope here. So then to go back to the church or to students or even the relationship, the pastor at the time that X left, it was essentially, it's kind of beyond hope, and it would take a miracle, and that's just not going to happen. And by the way, transformation, you say you've been transformed and saved, but that just takes years, and we just have to be sure it's real. And they're going down that route, which is a little off base there. And then whether it's in the church, the church is, well, we're being suppressed, there's nothing we can do, or even we're being suppressed, there's nothing we can do, so we ask students to share. I think that so quickly falls into category 2 of depressed and defeated, whether your circumstances are. And so a key in the tactical industry, there's a great student of mine, trains with some of the best instructors in the world, and he canceled his USCCA insurance policy and sent me a message, cancel my policy. We like Law Shield anyways, that's fine. But, but he said, I canceled my USCCA insurance policy. He said, because the country's so bad, if I ever had to use a gun in self-defense, I'd be better off just going out on the lam and fleeing to a country that doesn't have extradition. That is a definition of defeated and depressed. Whether we see it or not, we think that it's hopeless. So option A, I don't want you guys to think that we are hopeless. I think that without the supremacy of God, it's hopeless, whether it's my past relationship or the church or Facebook. But I don't think this country is hopeless. I think it's going to take supremacy of God in his hand and move. I think it's going to take prayer. And I do think it's going to take banding together. Even instructors in this industry, we are so quick to tear each other down on social media or to make comments in classes. And that's why I refuse to name people by name. It's going to take us banding together to start sharing each other's content. I've started pushing other instructors' training classes just because I know how hard it is to push ours. It's going to take guys like us being together in prayer and being for each other, because the answers are not going to be in the media and they're not going to be in society. They're going to be in truth and foundation and camaraderie and not just in tactics.
And in action. And
in life, yeah.
Prayer is good.
Yeah.
Hope is good. Banding together, numbers count.
Yeah.
And industry, unifying an industry is very important. So another thing I'm in is motorcycling. Well, motorcycles make up a small percentage of vehicles. When they're designing these smart highways and the signs and the pressure plates for the stop signs and all this that goes into highway design, a lot of times motorcycles are left out. So motorcycles band together, and we have the American Motorcyclists Association and several others. And they go to Congress and say, as a group, motorcyclists need this.
Yeah.
NRA with gun owners. Tactical instruction. It has to do the same thing. Otherwise, divide and conquer. The industry will just be tearing at each other. And the anti-gun and the anti-tactical training that calls tactical training dangerous. It's just, why does anybody need to do this? We'll come after you. And they'll have a united front. And they'll take action. So that's what I'm saying is hope and prayer is good. Action is also needed.
It's something to harp off your point, a point I made on here, I was going to get to. So PayPal has started sending money to pro-abortion candidates and pro-abortion. And so now there's a new rival to PayPal that's hitting the market called Pro-Life Payments. And it was started by a Christian business owner who simply said, I really don't want my money funding abortion. There's another one. So banks, I don't know if you guys know this, but banks are freezing accounts, and I have it here, of Christian charities and organizations. And so they're being labeled as they're freezing these accounts to the point, and even churches, some churches, some of the pro-Israel charities, banks, these woke banks are freezing their accounts. So Glorify Bank is a new bank that's being started, FDIC backed, and their whole thing is for the kingdom to start banding together. So now you've got Glorify Bank, you've got Pro-Life Payments. There's a new Facebook in the works. Some guys that I know pretty well are part of a huge tech firm out of the Triangle. There's a new Facebook, so now you've got new versions of Facebook in the works, new versions of PayPal in the works, new versions of banking in the works. So, and the goal with action is not to be violent or extreme, but you do have good people banding together that are taking action. They're using time, talent, treasure. We've heard that before to start pushing that agenda a little bit more. Or lawsuits, another great one. I saw there's a quote. It was the Rolling Stones on Christian nationals, just called Christian nationals, Rolling Stones and MSNBC, saying that Christian nationals are essentially the same as Hitler, and that they need to shut down Christians and treat them as traitors. In fact, they made a quote. So they quoted this, saying, how we really just need to and quoted a Christian kingdom-based. They're radical because they're talking about kingdom and pushing a kingdom, and that's the same thing as pushing an agenda like Hitler. And the person that they quoted actually, come to find out, is a Jew. Is the person that they quoted saying that the Jew is identical to Hitler in this great twist of
that's an interesting twist.
Mistaking, yeah. And so now kingdom is bad, but I think what it comes down to is a lot of this is just not seeing things in truth, and it goes back to category 3. Then how do we fix it? I think it's going to take people who A, believe in supremacy of God, B, are just grounded in truth, and have a changed perspective. I think the biggest thing I've started doing in classes is I don't really speak death anymore. What I mean by that is, oh yeah, brother, the country's hopeless, or oh yeah, there's nothing we can do. This training industry is just garbage, or
doom and gloom.
Yeah, it's hey, there are some flaws, but you know what? Like that's why we're going to push content harder. Or hey, there's flaws, but I can name 10 really good firearms instructors in North Carolina right now that I would personally recommend. Or hey, the country, the political party, maybe it's not a wave that you wanted, but here's the good that came out of it. So I think A, not focused on the enemy, but B, focused on light, and just believing that we are a body of believers and a body of people who have been put through the test, and I think miracles can still be performed today.
And I think like going back to the analogy or the example of the mind being the hardware, or the brain being the hardware.
Yeah.
Be careful what you allow to influence your life. Mm-hmm. Be careful what you let in, because there is a lot of negative content. I'm not exactly sure when that started. I think maybe back in the late 70s when things began to get negative, and so along the lines of the campaign, in the elections. I'm just so glad to see them over. I'm so tired of the negative.
Oh, that's all negative campaigning.
Yes.
It used to be a blend or something. Right. Now it's basically race for the gutter.
Exactly.
Who can throw out more dirt on their opponent?
Yeah. I mean, it's essentially what it's live clean, walk in truth, and that's what it's all about. And I still think that, we do have so many rights to be thankful for. And it goes back to like Russ said, it's just being thankful. If you wanted a red tidal wave or blue tidal wave and you didn't get it, you know what? We still had seemingly fair, open, and honest elections, or an election system that you could cast a vote in. I've been to countries where there isn't such a thing. And so I think we so often focus on the negative when we are called to do the exact opposite. And should be doing the exact opposite. I don't know can't name one, and you guys are history buffs too, any historical significant change that ever happened by people focusing on the negative. Guys, thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you guys for tuning into the first podcast. We really didn't dive into any tactics or training. This kind of just organically went a completely different route than the route that I had planned, and that's okay. But we're going to have a lot of good topics. I had some tools. I was like, man, I picked up my new blade from Tops and was going to talk about that, and the impact's awesome, and picked up all my new, Victos stuff that I was going to go over and review, and didn't really get time. So, it's okay. It's just content for the next podcast. We really didn't get into any of the tactics or the training or anything like that, but stay with us for the podcast series. I don't plan on it ending anytime soon. We're going to talk about a lot of great things: dry fire, tactics, CQB, blades, all kinds of training tips, tactical tips, and then we're going to go for the current events and video breakdowns, and what we're seeing in the industry, what we're seeing in classes. Shawn and I just wrapped up a great 2-day intro to long range class that we were talking before we started, that we could talk about lessons learned from students and things that we're seeing for hours just off that one class. And then we're going to dive into life stuff, so godly men and husbands and being grounded in truth. And Rod's like my go-to guy for godly fathers and mentors, which is going to be a whole series that we're going to do. Forgiveness, godly discipline is one that I am very ready to start. That I need to sit through myself. PTSD, it's something that a lot of guys I work with. I train all kinds of SWAT, Green Beret, everybody, and got a lot of guys that struggle with PTSD, and just how to overcome that, battle that with truth and mentorship,
and also let us know what you want to hear too.
Yeah, so good one. We'll have good guests on here. These guys are going to be regulars. A bunch of the employees are going to go. So you're going to get to know the employees at Apex Defense Group a lot better, and that's our goal. A lot of great people on here talk about a lot of really great topics. So Shawn's brought up a good point. What I want after you listen to this podcast is comment something that you want us to go over, whether it's tactics, training, survival, life. If you're struggling with something, spirituality, you can also reach out to us, over the website or via the Facebook page, or our contact information is on there. Reach out to us if you guys are struggling with anything you're doing, we can help you with. I'm also going to leave you guys with a challenge. Okay. So my challenge, I'm going to give you one every week. I'm going to give you a training challenge, and then I'm going to give you a life challenge. Okay. So your training challenge until the next podcast is going to be to think about your cold weather gear. Today was the first cold day in North Carolina, what I would consider cold, where I woke up and was uncomfortable with the cold. And I sent it to the group, and I was like, guys, it's a great day to start reevaluating your cold weather gear. If the power went out tomorrow, if a natural disaster hit tomorrow, if something happened tomorrow, how prepared, how stacked, how in favor are you for cold weather gear? Do you have waterproof jackets in redundancy that are insulated and warm? That also, I would prefer rip resistant or rip proof. Yeah, some of the slick Condura or ripstop fabric. Do you have base layers? Do you have insulators? Merino wool, just got a brand new pair of merino wool base layers and a bunch of pair of merino wool socks. How about socks? Like enough cold weather socks, and then insulation, and what's waterproof and what's wind resistant, what's snow resistant. A lot of people don't have redundancies as far as waterproof boots and warm weather boots. And then think about your kids. I can go teach classes. I teach all winter long, and I've got enough gear. Luckily, companies like 511 partner with us, and different companies. I run a lot of like Vertex gear and things that are part of us. But for you guys, start evaluating your needs on warm weather gear. So that's going to be my training in survival challenge for you.
And not just for a couple hours outside.
Yes.
All day.
For multiple days in a row. Insulated sleeping bags. Our sleeping bags are rated to like negative 27, So in redundancies, the last thing I would want is for your one jacket or your one pair of pants that are water resistant to get ripped, or something happened to them. So any cold weather gear or tips you guys have?
Oh, I mean, my all day cold weather gear experiences mostly come from motorcycling in Norway and Alaska and even in the mountains here. Yeah, wind and water are the fastest ways to get seriously cold and hypothermic. Wool is great. It may not be as comfortable. You mentioned merino wool. That's nice because that's comfortable wool.
Right. Midway USA has a sale right now. When this podcast is being filmed today, has a sale right now.
Wool is good. Layers are key. Because again, sweat's your enemy. You get into a situation where you start to sweat, you feel some layers. Just basic cold weather stuff.
6 months on the DMZ in Korea.
Mm.
So, coldest I've probably ever been in my entire life. And I can tell you that if you want to take the fight out of somebody, put them in that environment.
Cold and tired.
Yeah, cold and tired, because it's a game changer. Definitely layers. Make sure that base layer, as you were saying, make sure that's wicking and pulling moisture away from the body. And definitely redundancies, having changes both in socks and gloves with shells. But yeah, protect your ears, your nose, things like that. When it gets bitter cold, you'd be amazed the parts of your body that if they're exposed, it's gonna show up. Yeah. So definitely layers is the way to go.
Yeah, and show up fast. That's a lot of things. You show up fast.
You long distance runners out there, be careful.
Yeah.
My spiritual challenge to you guys is going to be to evaluate what you're doing to prepare for the next enemy's attack. That's going to be my challenge, because that's a challenge that I need. So we all know he's coming at a more opportune time, and it's going to be targeted. So if it's relationships, or it's negativity, or think about what category you're in. That's another spiritual challenge. I'm going to give you two. First podcast. What category are you in? Category 1, Category 2, or Category 3? And then my follow-up question is, once you're in that category, what are you doing to get out of that category if you're in the wrong one, or to move to a better place? And what are you doing for your next attack from the enemy? And you can take that twofold. If you're not a spiritual person, what are you doing to prepare yourself for the next enemy attack in the physical? You take that two ways. Anything you guys want to add?
Some tough challenges.
Yeah. Good challenges. Yeah. Good challenges. Thanks for having us, Ron. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys for being here. You're awesome.
Enjoyed it.
Awesome.